Alright, hello. This is the Stanley Parable 4. If you've played the game, you'll know that that's something that's added on once you finish everything the game has to offer, really. You'll be prompted to, well, start the game. Every time you start the game, it'll add a number to the end of Stanley Parable, and you'll get to add like a little subtext. So that's what happened here. What I'm going to be doing, which this does hurt a little to do, is I'm going to reset my save data. Now, this is on PlayStation, so I've platinumed the game completely. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going through the whole game, and I'm going to try to speedrun 100% of the game. So that's going to be all endings. I'm going to try to go for, well, everything. That's all the endings in the original game. That is the DLC content, all the collectibles, the epilogue, pretty much everything the game has to offer, which, since I've already platinumed the game, I don't need to worry about specific things for getting trophies, because I've already done them. So that means I won't be doing the playing the game for the entirety of a Tuesday. I did that yesterday. That was a pain. I won't be going into my console settings and setting the time to 10 years into the future. I'll just be playing the game. I'll be going for all endings, all the I won't be doing all the Easter eggs. I know that there's a broom closet one, but I feel like that's a lot just for the narrator to cover up a door with some planks, so I don't really want to do that. But a lot of the more interesting ones, all the actual endings, I'll be doing those. And with that, let's begin. And I will say, I never thought I'd play this game because it was always on PC. When it got ported to console, I wanted it, but I didn't. It was never on sale enough for me to justify actually purchasing the game. But I love its dry humor and how meta it is. And I will be exiting the game a couple of times to get all of the interactions with the settings man. I know that sounds a little silly, because it is, but I like him. He's a silly little guy. Be access to the main menu. Yes. Because also there's a couple of annoying achievements. Like, yeah, you gotta adjust every single setting in the game to every single number on every slider bar. It's like, that's kind of time consuming.
This is the story of a man named Stanley.
Stanley
worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427.
This is the only time it's going to play through, so I'm going to let it.
427's job was simple. He sat at his desk in room 427 and he pushed buttons on a keyboard. Orders came to him through a monitor on his desk, telling him what buttons to push, how long to push them, and in what order. This is what employee 427 did every day of every month of every year. And although others might have considered it soul-rending, Stanley relished every moment that the orders came in, as though he had been made exactly for this job. And Stanley was happy. And then one day, something very peculiar happened. Something that would forever change Stanley. Something he would never quite forget. He had been at his desk for nearly an hour when he realized that not one single order had arrived on the monitor for him to follow. No one had showed up to give him instructions, call a meeting, or even say hi. Never in all his years at the company had this happened, this complete isolation. Something was very clearly wrong. Shocked, frozen solid, Stanley found himself unable to move for the longest time. But as he came to his wits and regained his senses, he got up from his desk and stepped out of his office.
All right. And that is the intro. That's the only time we'll be listening to that. And here's ending number 1. You close the door.
But Stanley simply couldn't handle the pressure. What if he had to make a decision? What if a crucial outcome fell under his responsibility? He had never been trained for that. No. This couldn't go any way except badly. The thing to do now, Stanley thought to himself, is to wait. Nothing will hurt me. Nothing will break me. In here I can be happy forever. I will be happy. Stanley waited. Hours passed, then days. Had years gone by? He no longer had the ability to tell. But the one thing he knew for sure, beyond any doubt, was that if he waited long enough, the answers would come. Eventually, someday, they would arrive. Soon, very soon now, this will end. He will be spoken to. He will be told what to do. Now it's just a little bit closer. Now it's even closer. Here it comes.
And then the game restarts. Because the narrator is the one telling you what to do, and once you close that door, it actually locks, and you cannot leave.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean?
Okay, so
Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps
there's a
he had
little,
simply missed a memo.
a wee little Easter egg that happens with these computers. There is 4 of them. You just need to input, receive, and then you have to restart the game, either by manually restarting, or by getting a peculiar
No matter
little
how
ending.
hard Stanley looked, he couldn't find a trace of his co-workers.
I'm going to get the out of bounds ending real quick, just because it's going to be fairly simple. And I'm free.
At first, Stanley assumed he'd broken the map, until he heard this narration and realized it was part of the game's design all along. He then praised the game for its insightful and witty commentary into the nature of video game structure and its examination of structural narrative tropes. So, now that you're here, what do you think? Isn't this a fun and unique place to be? Why don't we take a minute just to drink it all in?
It is very trippy to see nothing but
I'm
white.
over it now. What do you think? Are you sick of this gag yet?
And if we answer no, he'll just tell you what would happen if you said yes.
Well, I don't know how to say this politely, but you could literally just restart the game any old time you want, like right now. You could have done it just then. Now would also be an appropriate time to quit. Any of these points and so many, many more, all of them are appropriate. I'm enjoying what seems to be an internal conflict going on where you are literally unable to act on your own desires to restart the game.
Which I am doing right now. But yeah, that's just a little fun thing. And now that I'm beginning the game again, the next computer should be ready.
All of his
Which
co-workers were
I
gone.
believe...
What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Here it is, computer number 2. The next one is the boss's office. So... which...
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
yes. Because the whole thing with this is that all the deluxe edition ads...
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there.
It adds a fair bit, but most of it's just the bucket that it adds on,
Coming to
and
a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
the additional dialogue that comes along with it. But it's not a lot. This is where Idol will be, a little collectible, which I will be collecting later. This was my first ending I got in the game, by the way.
Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss.
And this is
Admitting
basically
he had
just a long
left his
cutscene.
post during work hours. He might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all? None of it made any logical sense. And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations.
And this
For
is actually
example,
just a
why
loop,
couldn't
so I'll
he
just
see
be
his
walking while he
feet
talks.
When he looked down? Why did doors close automatically behind him wherever he went? And for that matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real. And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. "I'm dreaming!" he yelled. "This is all a dream." Oh, what a relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all.
This is one of the longest ones because it doesn't actually do anything. It's just narrating and waiting. There's only one other I think that's longer than this one.
Lucid. So, he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground.
Which, ironically enough, would be the one that we do
He
next.
imagined himself soaring through space
No.
on a magical star field, and it too appeared. It was so
One
much
after
fun,
next.
and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining?
The next
so
one's going to be
lucid?
longer, but in a
And
different
then
way.
perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking? Now the voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he thought. And while he thought it all very odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be? Was Stanley simply deceiving himself, believing that if he's asleep he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words was quite a shock to Stanley. After all, he knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too. Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this was a dream. So he closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up. He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin, the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of a world outside this one. Let me wake up, he thought to himself. I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please, it's all I want. I want my apartment, and my wife, and my job. All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been. My life is normal. I am normal. Everything will be fine. I am okay.
Aww. Psychotic break time.
Stanley began screaming. Please, someone wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I? And everything went black.
Bling.
This is the story of a woman named Mariella.
This tripped me out the first time I heard it. I was like, wait, did I get another ending where I play as Marielle instead of Stanley?
She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments, she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy. This much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like.
Everybody.
And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day. The very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this. So it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
Turned and ran. Drink. And right there, my first time playing this game, that was my first ending I got. My game crashed, and I thought it was a part of the game, and I was like, wait a minute, no, it wasn't.
What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a
So now that we've had this audio before, I'm just gonna kind of blaze through it because it's not going to be anything new because it is relatively the same.
Doors, he entered the door on his left.
The starting audio changes every once in a while, and it's neat, but it's not going to change by much.
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his... Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
And this is going to be the first kind of glitchier ending. I've got the feeling money's for stealing, but not yours, of course. So say that's a lovely purse in the executive bathroom. Okay, and this is the input number 3. And here is an interesting one. I'm going to have to be kind of quick about this.
Stepping in.
And by doing that, the game essentially acts like you just trick the narrator into thinking the story's going on its own. And this is kind of like, it feels like it's a beta ending, or like something that they added on as like a plot for the main ending. And instead of actually implementing it, they decided that while they were going to scrap it so it wasn't going to be the main ending, they were going to keep it as a sort of secret bug ending, which is really neat. And you just get to go through. You can open and close all the doors that you go through. If you take the right door and you go through the maintenance hall, that door's shut and you have to go through the meeting room. But then you come through here, and then that's Stanley's office. And then there's this door, 428, that was not open previously. And you get to go through a whole loading zone. And then it's, you are now leaving Escape Pod Bay on floor 760. And you have to go up 6 flights of stairs to get this. Which isn't bad. It's just kind of like, I wonder why this is happening. Why am I doing this? And it's pretty neat. There are a few more tedious endings that I will kind of talk over because they're mainly the narrator expositing. I just wanted to let the narrator kind of talk over that one ending we just got because it's my first one and I had my game crash on it, and I just felt like sharing that full experience would be kind of fun. And one more flight. And the whole thing with this ending, from what I looked into it, because I triggered that one by accident, because I had been trying to go into a door and then have it close behind me, and the boss's room was the first one that it worked on, is that essentially this is supposed to be the escape pod for the office, and then because the narrator isn't here, the story can't progress. And so it acts like a kind of bug ending where it just triggers a reset, which it's pretty neat in that regard. It's like, that's fairly clever.
All of his co-workers were...
And then...
No, this isn't the right office, is it? Is this Stanley's office?
And see, that's the narrator acting kind of weird, which he does that after you get some of the buggier endings. And there's input 4, and then when I start up the next game, the 5th input will be on Stanley's computer up in there. And we'll get the, what should I call it? The Truman Show ending. That feels nice. Okay, and then through here...
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Thank you. I think I want to do a right side ending.
This was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it. Yes, truly a room worth admiring.
I'm gonna let him
It
talk
had
about the
really been
break
worth the
room.
detour after all, just to spend a few moments here in this immaculate, beautifully constructed room. Stanley simply stood here, drinking it all in. But eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left.
No. And there's a
Stanley
lot of
was so bad at
endings from
following
in here
directions, it's
as well,
incredible
which
he
is pretty
wasn't
funny.
fired years ago.
There is a cold feet ending, there is the two phone endings, there's the door endings, and there's a vent ending as well over here. From getting up onto this chair, I believe. I know it's easier in Ultra Deluxe, but I don't remember quite exactly how. Because, yeah, see that vent? The whole thing is that you have to, like, get over the fence and drop into that vent, and you get into a secret little cubby, which is kind of neat. But I'll do that on once I've triggered the Ultra Deluxe DLC stuff, because it's just easier to do. But I'm gonna try to do a lot of the non-DLC stuff before I do that, and like stuff that's out of the way and not on the path to getting all of the endings. So
Look, Stanley, I think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I'm not your enemy, really, I'm not. I realize that investing your trust in someone else can be difficult, but the fact is that the story has been about nothing but you all this time. There's someone you've been neglecting, Stanley. Someone you've forgotten about. Please, stop trying to make every decision by yourself. Now, I'm not asking for me. This is it, Stanley. Your chance to redeem yourself. To put your work aside. To let her back into your life.
let her.
She's been waiting. That's her, Stanley.
Okay, I'm only gonna come into this room once because it's not. It has one of my favorite endings and one of my least favorite. So my least favorite is the one where you just answer the phone, and it's just like Stanley wasted away at his job, and it has you like have to press a button to continue the narration, and it's like stop pressing the button, Stanley, stop, and it's just I'll do it, but I don't like it. Like I really don't want to do this ending, but I will. Room 427.
Oh, Stanley, is that you? Hold on, sweetie. Sorry to keep you waiting. I'm just pulling the bread out of the oven. All right. Okay, there we go.
I wonder who they got for
All right, now, I want you to come in and tell me all about
Mrs. Stanley's voice.
Gotcha. Oh, come on. Did you actually think you had a loving wife who'd want to commit their life to you? I'm trying to make a point here, Stanley.
You suck,
I'm trying to get you
narrator.
to see something. Come
You're
inside.
very awful.
Let me show you what's really going on here. Sorry, but you're in my story now.
Oh, you're mean. You're mean. You're taking away my choices.
This is a very sad story about the death of a man named Stanley.
I never tried to do that before.
Stanley is quite a boring
And see,
fellow.
it'll have like
He has a
prompts, and you
job
have
that
to press the
demands nothing
buttons
of him.
to activate the
Every button
prompts.
that he pushes is a reminder of the inconsequential nature of his existence.
And it's just like, man.
Look at him there, pushing buttons, doing exactly
The
what
button
he's
prompts do
told to
randomize every time, though,
Now
which is
he's
neat.
pushing a button. Now he's eating lunch. Now he's going home. Now he's coming back to work. One might even feel sorry.
I'm going to talk over most of this one because I don't really like it. I'm going to actually turn down the narrator for this just because I don't like this ending that much.
A man named Stanley.
Like, I'm sorry if you're wanting to watch this for the full ending dialogue stuff, but I just really don't like this ending. It's for a game that's about expressing player agency and its effects on the world. This is very much a departure. Like, I understand why it is. It's the reminder of being stuck, but I dislike it for that reason because it's almost against the game that it's trying to portray.
realized that all of his co-workers, his boss, everyone in the building had suddenly vanished off the face of the earth. The thought excited him terribly. So he went further. He imagined that he came to 2 open doors and that he could go through either. At last, choice. It barely even mattered what lay behind each door. The mere thought that his decisions would mean something was almost too wonderful to behold. As he wandered through this fantasy world,
And it's just, man, I don't really dig it. But the other ending in that phone room is my favorite.
And down another was a yellow line that weaved in many directions. And down another was a game with a baby. And he called it the
Stanley Parable. Like, there's a few endings in this game that are just so good. There's the other ending in the phone room. There's the blue door ending. There's the adventure line that everyone knows about, which is that blue door. No, blue door adventure line is through the maintenance hall. And then there's a couple others that are interesting, but not as good.
Nothing has changed. The longer he spends here, the
And it's just like, huh, that's neat.
The more he forgets which life is the real one.
And after I do the
And I'm trying to tell him this.
computer sequence ending, quote unquote, I'll be closing the game and reopening to trigger the guy again. The funny little settings guy.
Stanley, the next time the screen asks you to push a button, do not do it.
But if you don't, no matter how long you wait, it will not progress. It will not end, and you have to do that.
You see? Can he just not hear me? How can I tell him in a way that he'll understand that every second he remains here, he's electing to kill himself?
Thanks, Stanley. Thanks, narrator. Love that.
I suppose I can't. Not in the way I want him to. But I don't make the rules.
When I did this the first time, it was mainly like the face buttons. Now it's mainly the D-pad, which is kind of funny.
We're not so different, I suppose. I'll try once more to convey all this to him. I'm compelled to.
I must.
Perhaps. Well, maybe this time you'll see.
Maybe this time.
And I tried again.
Please die.
And I tried again. And Stanley pushed a button. And I tried.
And it's like, wow. Not my favorite. And now this is ready. And if you close the game before you get all of the computers, you have to restart. And even after you do this, it'll be available every time you actually just restart the game. But if you close the game, you have to restart the inputs again. The Heaven Room. The chorus is just saying push the button, and you can push all the buttons you want. But they all refresh, and this is just a room that is ADHD heaven, I guess, or like sensory overload, where it's just you can constantly push a button, get the click, get the nice boop, and the color desaturation. But that's about all that room really has. So I'm going to quit the menu. And I'm going to try to close the game and restart it. So... Okay, so I'm only broadcasting mic audio. Good, good, good.